Right now, somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, there is a place where sunlight has never reached. Not today, not last year, not in 4 billion years. A place so deep that the water above it weighs more than 1,000 atmospheres. A place so dark that the creatures living there have never cast a shadow. A place so still that the only snow that falls there is made of the slow, silent drift of dead matter from a world they will never see. And yet, life is there, quiet, patient, unhurried life, going about its business in the dark as it has been doing since long before the first human being ever looked at the ocean and wondered what was beneath it. Welcome to Sleepy Science. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe it's been a long day. The kind where your body is tired, but your mind hasn't gotten the message yet. Maybe you're the kind of person who finds it easier to sleep when there's something large and quiet to rest your thoughts inside. Either way, you're exactly where you need to be. There's nothing to do now, nothing to figure out. Just let your body settle into whatever surface is holding you. Mattress, pillow, couch, and feel the weight of the day begin to release. Let your shoulders drop, let your jaw go soft, and let your breathing find its own slow rhythm, in and out, like a wave pulling back from a shore somewhere in the dark. You don't need to go anywhere tonight. The ocean will come to you. We'll begin at the surface, where light still filters down in pale blue columns, and the waves still carry the memory of wherever they began. And we'll move downward, layer by layer, into water that grows colder and darker and stranger with every 100 feet. You'll hear about twilight zone. Stew animals make a daily migration of half a mile in complete darkness. Up at night, down at dawn, a commute older than any city on Earth. About the midnight zone, where jellyfish drift like slow ghosts through water that has never once been warm. About the hadal zone, the deepest trenches on our planet, where life still exists at pressures that would flatten a steel submarine like a tin can, and where the sediment on the floor is so soft, so undisturbed, it took 1,000,000 years to settle into place. You'll hear about creatures so strange they seem to belong to a different universe entirely. About hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, cracks in the earth that pour out water hotter than 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Surrounded by ecosystems that run on chemistry instead of sunlight, and that may hold the secret of how life on this planet first began. About whale songs that travel thousands of miles through the deep. About the fact that we have mapped more of the surface of Mars than we have of our own ocean floor. Some of what you hear tonight may quietly shift something in you, the way a very large and very calm thing sometimes does. Some of it may be the last thing you remember before sleep. And before we begin, if Sleepy Science helps you find a little quiet at the end of the day, consider subscribing. It helps others find their way here too. One slow night at a time. The ocean has been here for 4 billion years. It waited that long. It can wait one more breath for you to settle in. Now, let's go down. Fact 1. The ocean is not what the map tells you. Most of us grew up with the same image, a blue globe, continents floating in it like islands, oceans filling the gaps between. But that image has it backwards. The ocean doesn't fill the gaps between the land fills the gaps between the ocean. Continents are the exception. Water is the rule. The ocean covers roughly 71% of Earth's surface. But that number undersells it because the ocean isn't just wide, it's deep. Extraordinarily, almost incomprehensibly deep. If you took every mountain and every valley on land and submerged them, the ocean would still have room. The average depth of the ocean is about 12,100 feet, more than 2 miles straight down. The average height of land above sea level is only about 750 feet. Earth isn't a rocky planet with some water on it. Earth is an ocean planet with a little rock poking through. Fact 2. The color of the sea is a lie your eyes till you stand at the edge of the ocean on a clear day and the water looks blue, sometimes deep and dark near the horizon, sometimes turquoise in the shallows, sometimes almost green near the shore. It's one of the most beautiful things most of us have ever seen. But here's what's strange. The ocean has no color of its own. Hold a glass of seawater up to the light and it looks perfectly clear. Water itself is transparent, but in enormous quantities, something shifts. Water absorbs the longer wavelengths of light, the reds and oranges and yellows, and scatters the shorter blue wavelengths back toward your eyes. The blue isn't a property of the ocean. It's what's left after the ocean has quietly consumed everything else. Near the coast, the color shifts toward green. Not from the water itself, but from phytoplankton, microscopic organisms so abundant they tint entire stretches of sea. These same organisms, invisible to the naked eye, produce roughly half of all the oxygen on Earth. The ocean looks blue, but what you're really seeing is the color of light being slowly swallowed, everything warm and bright absorbed into the deep, and only the cool and quiet sent back to you. Fact 3. Every wave you've ever seen began somewhere else. There's something quietly remarkable about standing at the edge of the water and watching a wave come in. It feels like the ocean is moving toward you, like the water itself has traveled from somewhere far away to arrive at your feet, but it hasn't. A wave is not water moving forward. A wave is energy moving through water. The water molecules in a wave mostly move in small circles, rising as the wave passes, then settling back almost exactly where they started. What travels is the shape, the pattern, the pulse. That wave breaking on a beach in California may have begun as a storm off the coast of Japan 2 weeks earlier, not carrying water across the Pacific, but carrying energy, a disturbance that moved through 10,000 miles of ocean as pure motion, growing, organizing, until it finally ran out of depth and broke into white foam at someone's feet. Every wave is a message from somewhere else, sent weeks ago from a storm that has long since passed and been forgotten. Fact 4. The ocean is slowly absorbing our world and buying us time we don't fully appreciate. The ocean does something for us that rarely gets acknowledged, something quiet and enormous and entirely thankless. It absorbs carbon dioxide. Every day, the ocean pulls roughly a quarter of all the carbon dioxide humans release into the atmosphere and dissolves it into its waters. Over the past century, as we've burned more fossil fuels and filled the sky with more carbon than at any point in human history, the ocean has been quietly absorbing a significant portion of it, slowing the pace of climate change in ways we are only beginning to measure. This comes at a cost. Dissolved carbon dioxide makes seawater more acidic, a process called ocean acidification that is gradually affecting coral, reefs, shellfish, and marine ecosystems in ways scientists are still working to understand. The ocean is not passive. It is not simply a stage on which life plays out. It is actively mediating the chemistry of the planet, absorbing what we release, paying a price we haven't asked it to pay, and doing so in silence without asking anything in return. Fact 5. The salt in every ocean on Earth is older than the first living thing. The ocean is salty. That much everyone knows. But the story of where that salt came from is older than almost anything else you can name. Salt enters the ocean primarily through rivers. As rainwater flows over land, it slowly dissolves minerals from rocks, including sodium and chloride, and carries them downhill into streams, into rivers, and eventually into the sea. Water evaporates from the surface and returns as rain, but the salt stays behind. This process has been running continuously for billions of years. The ocean is estimated to contain about 37 billion tons of dissolved salt. To put that another way, if you removed every drop of water from the ocean and let it evaporate, the salt left behind would bury every continent on Earth under a layer more than 500 feet thick. This salt has been accumulating since before the first single-celled organism ever existed. The ocean was already ancient, already deep, already full of the minerals of a young and restless planet when life quietly began inside it, everything moving, quietly, slowly, endlessly. Out there, the ocean is breathing. In here, so are you. Fact 6. The sea has a heartbeat, and every coastline on Earth leaves downstream from it. Imagine a conveyor belt so large it passes through every ocean on Earth, running continuously for 1,000 years to complete a single loop. That conveyor belt exists, and it is what keeps much of the planet habitable. It's called thermohaline circulation, or sometimes the global ocean conveyor belt. It works because of two simple properties of water. Temperature and salt content affect how dense water is. Cold, salty water is denser and sinks toward the ocean floor. Warm, lighter water rises to take its place. These differences set in motion a circulation that connects the Atlantic, Pacific, Indian, and Southern Oceans in one slow, continuous loop. This system moves heat from the equator toward the poles, moderating the climate of entire continents. Without it, Northern Europe would be dramatically colder. The Amazon would receive less rain. Nutrients that feed the ocean's food chain would stop rising to the surface. The ocean has a pulse, deep, slow, and planetary in scale, and every coastline, every weather pattern, every fishing ground on Earth lives somewhere downstream from it. Fact 7. Sunlight only reaches so far. Then the world quietly changes. Stand in the shallows of a clear tropical sea, and the world below is bright and warm. You can see every grain of sand, every coral, every fish drifting through columns of pale light. It feels like the ocean is an extension of the surface world, just wetter. But sunlight doesn't travel far in water. The uppermost layer, roughly the top 660 feet, is called the sunlit zone. This is where almost all marine plant life exists, where coral reefs grow, where most of the ocean life we know lives. It is the part of the ocean humans have always known, and it represents less than 5% of the ocean's total volume. Below 660 feet, light begins to fade. Colors disappear one by one, red first, then orange, then yellow, until only blue remains, growing dimmer with every foot. By 300 feet, it is gone entirely. Not dim gone. An absolute, permanent, total darkness that no season will ever change, no sunrise will ever touch. Right now, more than 95% of the ocean exists in complete darkness. The world we think of as the ocean is just the surface of something far deeper and far stranger than we've ever fully imagined. Ninyipta, somewhere below, the light is fading, slower, softer, dimmer, until there is only dark, and everything that learned to live inside it. Fact 8. The ocean is not one body of water. It never was. We say the ocean as if it's a single thing, one vast, uniform body of water wrapped around the planet. But that's a simplification scientists have long moved past. Oceanographers recognize 5 distinct oceans: the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, Southern, and Arctic, each with its own temperature, salt content, current systems, and wildlife. The Pacific alone covers more area than every landmass on Earth combined. The Southern Ocean, circling Antarctica, was only officially recognized as a distinct ocean by the National Geographic Society in 2021, after decades of scientific debate about where one ocean ends and another truly begins. Even within each ocean, distinct layers exist: warm surface water sitting above cold deep water, separated by a boundary called the thermocline that slows mixing between them like an invisible floor. The ocean is not one world. It is many worlds stacked inside each other, each colder, darker, and quieter than the one above, all the way down to the floor. Fact 9. There is a highway of sound beneath the ocean, and whales have been using it for millennia. Sound travels about 4 times faster in water than in air. But that's not the remarkable part. At a depth of roughly 2,400 to 4,000 feet, temperature and pressure combine in just the right way to create what scientists call the SOFAR channel: sound fixing and ranging. In this layer, sound doesn't spread outward in all directions the way it does on land. Instead, it gets funneled horizontally, traveling enormous distances with almost no loss of energy. A sound produced in this channel off the coast of California has been detected thousands of miles away near New Zealand. Fin whales and blue whales produce calls in exactly the frequency range that travels best through this channel. Their songs, low, slow, resonant, can cross entire ocean basins. A whale singing alone in the North Atlantic may be heard by another whale near Iceland. For millions of years before we discovered this channel, before we had any instruments capable of detecting it, whales were already using it, sending their voices along a highway we didn't know existed, through a darkness we had never seen. Fact 10. The surface is the thinnest skin on the deepest thing we know. The average depth of the ocean is about 12,100 feet. The deepest point, Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, reaches nearly 36,000 feet, almost 7 miles of water, straight down. The sunlit zone, the part of the ocean you've ever swum in, ever seen photographed, ever imagined when you picture the sea, is the top 660 feet of that. If the entire ocean were compressed into a single mile, the sunlit zone would be the top 3 inches. Everything we associate with the ocean, the coral reefs, the dolphins, the waves, the light, exists in that thin, bright membrane at the very surface. Below it, the ocean drops away into something else entirely, something older, something that has never needed the sun, something that has been going about its quiet business in the cold and the dark since long before anything on the surface of this planet learned to breathe. You are floating at the very edge of it, and below you, the real ocean begins. Factice 11. Below 660 feet, sunlight becomes a rumor. You already know the sunlit zone ends at around 660 feet, but knowing that and feeling it are 2 different things. at 100 feet, the depth a recreational scuba diver might reach on a good day. The water is already noticeably darker. Reds and oranges have vanished. Everything takes on a blue-green cast, like being inside old glass. At 300 feet, it feels like late dusk. At 600 feet, it feels like the moment just before night takes over completely. That last thin wash of blue before the sky goes black. And then somewhere around 660 feet, the last photon of usable sunlight gives up. Below that line is a zone called the mesopelagic, the twilight zone. It stretches from 660 feet down to about 3,300 feet. There is no plant life here, no photosynthesis, no warmth from above. The temperature drops to just a few degrees above freezing, and the pressure increases with every foot of descent. And yet this zone is one of the most biologically active places on Earth. Life didn't retreat when the light left. It adapted, and in adapting, became something stranger and more beautiful than anything the sunlit world ever produced. Fact 12. Bioluminescence. In the dark, life decided to become its own light in the twilight zone and below. An estimated 76% of marine animals produce their own light. Not reflected light, not borrowed light. Light they generate themselves through a chemical reaction involving a molecule called luciferin, the same root word as Lucifer, meaning light bearer. When luciferin reacts with oxygen in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase, it produces a cold, efficient, almost entirely heatless glow. This light serves different purposes for different animals. Some use it to attract prey, dangling a luminous lure in the darkness and waiting. Some use it to communicate with potential mates. Some use it in a trick called counter-illumination, producing a faint glow on their undersides that matches the dim light from above, making them effectively invisible to predators looking up from below. Bioluminescence has evolved independently at least 40 separate times in the ocean. In fish, in squid, in jellyfish, in bacteria, in worms. The deep ocean didn't go dark when the sun left. It made its own light. In blues and greens and occasional ghostly whites, scattered through the water like a sky of slow, cold stars. Fact 13. The animals of the twilight zone make a daily migration that dwarfs anything on land. Every night, one of the largest migrations on Earth takes place, and almost no one has ever seen it. As darkness falls at the surface, billions of animals from the twilight zone begin moving upward. Small fish, squid, shrimp, and zooplankton, collectively called the deep scattering layer, rise hundreds of feet toward the surface to feed on the phytoplankton and smaller organisms that live in the sunlit zone. Then, before dawn, they descend again back down into the cold and the dark, carrying the carbon they've consumed with them. This daily vertical migration covers distances of 1,500 to 3,000 feet, up and back, every single day for the entire lives of these animals. It is the largest migration on Earth by biomass, larger than the wildebeest migration in Africa, larger than the monarch butterfly migration across North America, happening every night in near total silence, in water so deep most humans will never come close to it. And it has been happening without interruption for tens of millions of years. Fact 14. Pressure here would crush a steel drum. Like an empty soda can at the surface of the ocean, the weight of the atmosphere above you exerts a pressure of about 14.7 pounds per square inch. That's what your body is accustomed to. what it has been calibrated for since birth. For every 33 feet you descend into the ocean, pressure increases by that same amount. By 660 feet, the top of the twilight zone, pressure is already 20 times what you feel on the surface. By 300 feet, the bottom of the twilight zone, it is 100 times surface pressure. At that depth, an unsealed steel drum would be crushed inward as though it were made of paper. The animals living here have no rigid air spaces in their bodies, no swim bladders filled with gas, no lungs holding air. Their bodies are built to equalize with the pressure around them, soft and yielding and perfectly adapted to a world where the weight of the water above is a constant, unrelenting presence. They don't feel the pressure. They are the pressure, shaped by it over millions of years into something the surface world would barely recognize as life. Yep, down here, the rules change. Slowly, silently, completely. And life finds a way, it always finds a way. Fact 15. There are more undiscovered species here than anywhere on land. Scientists estimate that somewhere between 700,000 and 1 million species live in the ocean. Of those, fewer than 250,000 have been formally identified and described. The twilight zone alone is thought to contain more undiscovered species than any comparable habitat on land. Every research expedition that ventures into these depths returns with organisms that have never been seen before. New species of fish, new varieties of jellyfish, new forms of microbial life clinging to particles of marine snow. In 2020, researchers exploring a submarine canyon off the coast of Western Australia discovered what may be the longest animal ever recorded. A siphonophore, estimated at 150 feet in length, longer than a blue whale, drifting in near total darkness at a depth of about 2,000 feet. It had almost certainly been there for years. We had simply never looked. The twilight zone is not a barren wasteland of darkness and cold. It is one of the most species-rich environments on the planet. Most of it still unknown, still unnamed, still going about its business entirely without us. Fact 16. The anglerfish carries its light like a lantern in a world that forgot the sun. The female anglerfish is one of the most recognizable creatures of the deep, that gaping jaw, those needle teeth, and above all, that single luminous lure dangling from a filament on her forehead like a fishing rod built into her skull. The light on that lure is not her own. It is produced by bioluminescent bacteria living inside the lure in a symbiotic relationship. The bacteria get shelter and nutrients. The anglerfish gets a built-in light source she never has to recharge. She drifts in the darkness, perfectly still, and waits. Any small fish or crustacean drawn toward the light swims directly into range of a jaw that can open wide enough to swallow prey twice her own size. Her stomach is so elastic it can expand to accommodate whatever arrives. The male anglerfish is a fraction of the female's size, and when he finds a female, he bites into her skin and fuses with her body permanently, his circulatory system connecting to hers, his eyes degenerating, most of his organs dissolving, until he becomes little more than a pair of reproductive organs attached to her side. She may carry several males at once. In a world with no light and no landmarks, where finding another member of your own species might happen only once in a lifetime, evolution found a solution. It is not a gentle one, but it works. Fact S17. Some creatures here have never seen the surface and never will. There are fish in the twilight zone that are born in the dark, live their entire lives in the dark, and die in the dark, never ascending to a depth where light exists, never experiencing the concept of a sky or a sun or a color other than the cold blue-green of their own bioluminescence. Their eyes have adapted in one of two directions. Some have evolved enormous eyes, sometimes tubular in shape, pointing upward to catch the faintest traces of light from above. Others have evolved no functional eyes at all, having abandoned sight entirely in favor of other senses, pressure detection, chemoreception, sensitivity to electrical fields. Their world is defined not by what they see, but by what they feel. Pressure changes, chemical gradients, the faint vibrations of something moving nearby in the dark. These animals are not lesser versions of surface creatures. Diminished, impoverished, trapped, they are complete, fully realized, perfectly suited to a world that most of life on Earth will never encounter. Fact 18. Below 300 feet, there is no light at all, not even a rumor. The twilight zone ends at roughly 300 feet. Below that line begins the midnight zone, the bathypelagic, stretching from 300 feet down to about 13,000 feet. There is no light here of any kind from the surface. No dawn, no dusk, no seasonal change. The temperature hovers just above freezing and varies by only a degree or two across thousands of miles. To descend into the midnight zone is to enter a world where the sun has never existed as a relevant fact. Not absent, irrelevant. A star burning 93 million miles away simply does not register here. The pressure at the bottom of this zone is roughly 400 times what you feel right now. And yet the midnight zone is not empty. It is filled with life, sparse, slow, patient life, drifting through water so cold and so dark it is almost indistinguishable from space almost. But not quite, because space, as far as we know, is empty. The midnight zone is not 3,000 feet below the surface. No light, no warmth, no sound but the slow movement of cold water, and still, quiet, patient, impossible life. Fact 19. The giant squid lives in this darkness, and we have barely seen it alive. For most of human history, the giant squid was a myth. Sailors reported tentacles as thick as a man's torso breaking the surface. Carcasses washed ashore occasionally, enormous, rubbery, decaying, but no living specimen had ever been observed in its natural habitat. It wasn't until 2004 that Japanese researchers captured the first photographs of a live giant squid in the wild. The first footage of one alive in the deep ocean wasn't obtained until 2012. The first footage of one in United States waters wasn't recorded until 2019. Giant squid can reach lengths of up to 43 feet. Their eyes, the largest of any living animal, can measure up to 10 inches in diameter, roughly the size of a dinner plate, evolved to detect the faint bioluminescent flashes of sperm whales, hunting them in the dark. They live at depths between 1,000 and 3,000 feet. They are thought to be widespread across every ocean on Earth. And despite their enormous size, despite centuries of sailors' stories, despite decades of scientific searching, we have almost no footage of them, almost no direct observations. A creature 43 feet long, living in every ocean on Earth, and it has managed to remain almost entirely hidden from us. The ocean keeps its secrets well. Fact 20. Marine snow. The slow, silent snowfall that never stops in the sunlit zone far above Phytoplankton bloom and die. Zooplankton feed and excrete. Fish shed scales and leave behind the remains of their meals. All of this organic material, the constant biological activity of the upper ocean, doesn't disappear. It sinks, very, very slowly. This continuous, gentle rain of organic particles drifting downward through the water column is called marine snow. Under a light, it looks like a slow-motion snowstorm. Tiny white flecks tumbling through the dark in complete silence. A single particle might take weeks to drift from the surface to the seafloor thousands of feet below. Marine snow is the primary food source for much of the deep ocean. The creatures of the midnight zone and below depend almost entirely on what drifts down to them from a world they will never see. Every meal they eat was once something living in sunlight. It is also one of the ocean's most important carbon sinks, locking carbon in the deep for centuries or millennia before it can return to the atmosphere. The snow falls every second of every day. It has been falling since the first organisms bloomed in the sunlit ocean hundreds of millions of years ago. And right now, as you lie still, it is falling, slow and silent and endless, 3 miles below the surface of the sea. Fact 21. Deep-sea jellyfish move like slow ghosts through water that has never been warm. Deep-sea jellyfish are among the most alien-looking organisms on Earth. Unlike their surface cousins, translucent, pulsing, trailing long stinging tentacles, many deep-sea jellyfish are elaborate, almost architectural structures. Some resemble spinning crowns. Some look like paper lanterns. Some produce light in cascading waves across their bells when disturbed, like a slow-motion alarm. They move through the midnight zone at a pace that seems almost geological. A single pulse of the bell every few seconds, covering perhaps a foot or two, drifting more than swimming in water. This cold and this dark, metabolic rates slow dramatically. Some deep-sea jellyfish are thought to live for decades. They don't hunt so much as drift into their food, or let their food drift into them. In a world with no sunlight, no seasons, no real sense of time passing, a jellyfish has no reason to hurry, and so it doesn't. Fact 22. Life here has no concept of seasons. Only depth, only stillness on the surface. The ocean breathes with the seasons. Spring blooms of phytoplankton, summer warmth, autumn cooling, winter storms. Life on the surface tracks time through these cycles, calibrated to the rhythms of a planet tilted on its axis and orbiting a star. In the midnight zone, none of this reaches. The temperature does not change with the seasons. The light does not change. The pressure does not change. The only rhythm that exists here is the slow, faint pulse of marine snow drifting down from above. More after a surface bloom, less during lean times. But even that signal arrives weeks after the fact, muffled and diffuse. The creatures of the midnight zone live outside of time as most life understands it. No circadian rhythms, no seasonal migrations, no biological clocks tuned to a sun they have never seen. Just depth, just cold, just the slow drift of water and particles, and the patient waiting that defines everything down here. It is not loneliness. It is not suffering. It is simply a different relationship with time, one so ancient and so quiet that the surface world, with all its urgency and noise and light, seems like a recent and rather restless invention. Fact 23. We know more about the surface of Mars than the bottom of our own ocean. NASA has mapped the surface of Mars to a resolution of about 20 feet per pixel. We have high-resolution topographic maps of the Moon, Venus, and Mercury. We have detailed imagery of asteroids hundreds of millions of miles away. The ocean floor of our own planet remains, by comparison, almost entirely unknown. As of today, only about 20 to 25% of the global ocean floor has been mapped with high-resolution sonar. The rest, roughly the same surface area as all of North America, South America, Europe, and Asia, combined, has been surveyed only at low resolution or not at all. The reason is practical but striking. Sound waves sent down from ships can map the broad shape of the ocean floor, but to get the kind of detail we have of other planets requires sending instruments much closer to the bottom, which means slow, expensive, technically demanding expeditions into water that does not give up its secrets easily. We have better maps of the side of the Moon than we do of the ocean trenches beneath the Pacific. The most alien landscape most people will never see is not on another planet. It is here, on Earth, 2 miles beneath the surface of the water. Fact 24. The Mariana Trench is deeper than Mount Everest is tall. By more than a mile, Mount Everest rises 29,032 feet above sea level. It is the highest point on Earth's surface, a fact most school children learn early and carry with them for the rest of their lives. The Mariana Trench in the western Pacific Ocean reaches a maximum depth of approximately 35,876 feet at its deepest point, a location called Challenger Deep. If you picked up Mount Everest and placed it at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the summit would still be more than a mile underwater. The trench itself is roughly 580 miles long and 43 miles wide, about the length of the United States from New York to Denver, and narrow enough that it would barely register on a map of the Pacific. It was formed over millions of years by the subduction of the Pacific Plate beneath the Mariana Plate. 2 vast sections of Earth's crust grinding together in slow motion, one dragging the other downward into the mantle. The deepest point on the surface of our planet is also one of the least visited, least studied, and least understood. More people have stood on the summit of Everest than have descended to Challenger Deep, by a very wide margin. Fact 25. Water pressure at the bottom equals 50 jumbo jets stacked on your chest at the surface. Atmospheric pressure pushes down on your body at about 14.7 pounds per square inch. Your body has evolved to handle exactly this amount, not more, not significantly less. At Challenger Deep, nearly 36,000 feet below the surface, the pressure reaches approximately 16 pounds per square inch, more than 1,000 times what you feel right now. To put that in more physical terms, it is roughly equivalent to the weight of 50 fully loaded jumbo jets pressing down on every square inch of your body simultaneously. A styrofoam cup sent down to that depth comes back the size of a thimble, compressed by the pressure into a dense, shrunken version of its former self. Every air pocket crushed out of existence. A human body, unprotected, would not survive for a fraction of a second. And yet the hadal zone, the deepest 1% of the ocean, below 20,000 feet, is not empty. It has never been empty. Life found a way in. It has been there, in the dark and the cold and the crushing weight, for millions of years. Fact 26. And yet, life is there. Small, pale, unhurried life. The first scientists who seriously proposed that life might exist in the hadal zone were largely dismissed. The conditions seemed too extreme, too cold, too dark, too pressurized, too isolated from the food chains of the surface world. Then, we look. The hadal zone is home to amphipods, small, shrimp-like crustaceans that exist in extraordinary numbers in the deepest trenches. Researchers have found them in the Mariana Trench at densities that surprised everyone. They feed on the marine snow that drifts down from above, on the bodies of dead animals that sink to the bottom on each other. There are also snailfish, pale, translucent, almost ghostly, that hold the record for the deepest fish ever observed. In 2023, a snailfish was filmed at approximately 349 feet in the Izu Ogasawara Trench near Japan, the deepest any fish has ever been recorded. It moved slowly. It seemed unbothered, at a depth that would kill any unprotected human being in an instant. A small pale fish was going about its day. Fact 27. The sediment at the very bottom is impossibly soft, like powdered snow that took 1,000,000 years to settle. The floor of the deepest ocean trenches is not rock. It is not sand. It is sediment, an accumulation of marine snow, the skeletal remains of microscopic organisms called foraminifera, volcanic ash, cosmic dust, and organic material that has been drifting down from the surface for millions of years. Layer upon layer upon layer, building so slowly that a single inch of sediment may represent thousands of years of accumulation. When the submersible Trieste descended to Challenger Deep in 1960, the first crewed vehicle ever to reach the bottom, one of the first things its occupants noticed when they touched down was that the bottom rose up around them in a soft, billowing cloud. The sediment was so fine, so undisturbed, so delicate that a gentle touchdown was enough to send it drifting. That sediment has not been significantly disturbed in thousands of years. It holds, layer by layer, a chemical record of everything the ocean above it has experienced. Temperature changes, extinctions, asteroid impacts, ice ages, written in particles finer than flour, compressed by time into one of the most complete archives on Earth. Fact 28. Some water you could swim in has never seen sunlight, not once in 1,000 years. The deep ocean doesn't turn over quickly. In the open ocean, surface water and deep water do exchange. Driven by thermohaline circulation, the slow conveyor belt of temperature and salinity differences. But in the deepest trenches, circulation is even more restricted. Water can become effectively isolated, trapped in the basin of a trench, cut off from the broader circulation of the ocean above. Studies of water chemistry in various deep ocean basins suggest that some water at great depths has not been in contact with the surface, has not exchanged gases with the atmosphere, has not been touched by sunlight for periods exceeding 1,000 years. That water was last at the surface during the Middle Ages. When it last breathed the air above, there were no telescopes, no printing presses, no knowledge that the Americas existed. It sank slowly into the dark, and it has been there ever since, cold still, patient, waiting for a circulation pattern that moves on timescales too slow for any human lifetime to witness. 1,000 years of stillness, cold, dark, undisturbed. The ocean keeps time in ways we are only beginning to read. Fact 29. The hadal zone is one of the quietest places on Earth. Quiet on the surface is relative. Even in the most remote wilderness, there is wind, there are insects, there are the sounds of water moving and animals living, and the low-frequency hum of the planet itself. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, researchers expected silence. What they found was more complicated. In 2016, scientists lowered a hydrophone, an underwater microphone, to Challenger Deep and recorded sound continuously for 3 weeks. They captured everything. The low moan of earthquakes hundreds of miles away. The calls of baleen whales drifting somewhere far above. The sound of a Category 4 typhoon passing over the surface, reduced at that depth to a faint and distant rumble. And underneath all of it, a baseline. A low, continuous acoustic presence produced by the ocean itself. Not silence, but something close to it. The sound of an enormously deep body of water doing what it has always done. Moving, shifting, settling. The hadal zone is not silent, but it is the closest thing to silence that this planet offers. Fact has 30. Trenches are born from the slow collision of tectonic plates, a process so gradual it cannot be felt. The Mariana Trench exists because of a collision that has been happening for tens of millions of years and is still happening right now. So slowly that no human instrument can detect it in real time. The Pacific Plate, one of the largest tectonic plates on Earth, is moving westward at a rate of roughly 3 inches per year. Where it meets the Mariana Plate, it is denser and heavier, so it bends downward and slides beneath. A process called subduction. As it descends into the mantle, it drags the ocean floor down with it, carving the trench deeper over millions of years. 3 inches per year. That is roughly the rate at which your fingernails grow. At that rate, over 50 million years, the Pacific Plate has moved more than 500 miles, and in doing so, carved the deepest point on the surface of the Earth. The trench is not a static feature. It is a process, ongoing, unstoppable, imperceptibly slow. The ground beneath the deepest ocean is still moving. It has never stopped. Fact 31. Sounds from the surface still reach the bottom. Faintly, like an echo of another world, the ocean is not acoustically sealed. Sound, particularly low-frequency sound, travels through water with remarkable efficiency, and the boundaries between ocean layers slow it, but do not stop it entirely. Researchers recording at Challenger Deep have detected the acoustic signatures of surface ships passing miles overhead. They have recorded the distant rumble of earthquakes occurring on the other side of the Pacific. They have even detected sounds that appear to originate from commercial shipping lanes thousands of miles away. The low, continuous drone of propellers and engines carried through the water column to the deepest point on Earth. The hadal zone receives these sounds not as the crisp, clear signals they began, but as whispers, attenuated, filtered, arriving late and distorted by miles of water. Something of the surface world reaches the bottom, just not enough of it to matter to the creatures living there, who have built their lives entirely around everything the surface world cannot provide. Fact 32. There are microbes living inside the trench rocks themselves. Life in the hadal zone is not limited to the water column or the sediment surface. Scientists have discovered microbial life living inside the rocks of the ocean trenches, in tiny fractures and pores in the basalt, metabolizing chemicals leached from the rock itself, surviving without sunlight, without organic food from above, in conditions that would sterilize most environments on Earth. These microbes, collectively called the deep biosphere, are thought to represent a significant fraction of all living biomass on Earth. Estimates vary widely, but some researchers have suggested that the total mass of microbial life in the deep subsurface, in ocean sediments and crustal rocks, may rival the total mass of all life on the surface. They live at temperatures near freezing. They reproduce so slowly that a single generation may take thousands of years. They have been isolated from the surface world for so long that their evolutionary history is almost entirely separate from anything living in sunlight. They are, in every meaningful sense, alien life, living on the same planet as us, breathing the same earth, but in a world so different it barely qualifies as shared. Fact 33. The creatures that live here are transparent, as if they have nothing left to hide. Many of the animals found in the hadal zone, amphipods, the snailfish, certain species of shrimp, are partially or completely transparent. In a world with no light, pigmentation serves no purpose. There is no predator that can see color, no mate to be attracted by a bright display, no camouflage needed against a background that looks the same in every direction. So over millions of years, the metabolic cost of producing pigment was quietly abandoned. Looking at a hadal snailfish under a laboratory light, you can see through its body the outline of organs visible through pale, almost translucent skin. Its eyes are small and poorly developed, relics of a sensory system that no longer serves much function at these depths. What it has instead are extraordinarily sensitive lateral lines, pressure-sensing organs running along its body that detect the faintest disturbances in the water around it. It doesn't need to see. It feels its way through a world that has nothing left to hide and nothing left to show. Transparent bodies in total darkness, feeling instead of seeing. Life stripped down to what it actually needs, and nothing more. Fact 34. We have sent people to the bottom of the Mariana Trench only 4 times in all of human history. The first crewed descent to Challenger Deep took place on January 23, 1960, when Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh descended in a vessel called the Trieste. They spent about 20 minutes on the bottom before ascending. Their visibility through the viewport was limited. Their instruments were basic, but they confirmed for the first time that the deepest point on Earth was reachable and inhabited. The second crewed descent didn't happen until 2012, when filmmaker James E. Cameron descended alone in a purpose-built submersible called the Deep Sea Challenger. He spent about 3 hours on the bottom. 2 more crewed dives followed in 2019 and 2020 as part of the 5 Deeps expedition, the first attempt to reach the deepest point in each of the world's 5 oceans. 4 crewed visits to the deepest point on Earth. In the same period, over 600 people have traveled to space. We have prioritized the stars over the abyss beneath our own feet. And the abyss, patient as it always is, has simply waited. Fact 35. Each time we look closer at the deep, we find something that shouldn't exist. And this is perhaps the most consistent finding in the history of deep ocean exploration. Every time researchers descend to a new depth, enter a new trench, shine a light into a previously unexamined corner of the hadal zone, they find something that the prevailing scientific understanding said shouldn't be there. Life where there is no food source. Organisms at pressures thought to be incompatible with biological processes. Species identical to those found in trenches on the opposite side of the planet, separated by thousands of miles of open ocean with no apparent route between them. chemical signatures that don't match any known geological process. The deep ocean has been consistently, repeatedly, almost stubbornly surprising, not because it is chaotic or random, but because it operates according to rules we have not yet fully learned, in conditions we have not yet fully modeled, over time scales we have not yet fully appreciated. Every answer the hadal zone gives us arrives attached to two more questions. And somewhere down there, in the dark and the cold and the impossible quiet, the questions are still accumulating, patient, unhurried, waiting for the next light we send down. Fact 36. The barrel-eye fish has a completely transparent head. The barrel-eye fish looks like something designed by someone who had never seen a fish before. Its head is entirely transparent, a clear, fluid-filled dome sitting above its body like a glass helmet. Inside that dome, visible through the skin, are two bright green tubular eyes that can rotate freely, pointing upward to scan for the silhouettes of prey against the faint light from above, then swiveling forward when something worth pursuing comes into range. For decades, researchers studying preserved specimens thought the green structures were the fish's eyes, but they were actually looking at the olfactory organs. The real eyes were the tubes inside the dome. We had the anatomy backwards for years. In a world with almost no light, the barrel eye evolved a head that is itself a window, maximizing every available photon in a darkness that offers almost none. Fact 37. The blobfish looks nothing like its famous photograph. The blobfish is one of the most recognized deep-sea creatures on Earth. Its drooping, melancholy face has been turned into merchandise, memes, and mascots. It was voted the world's ugliest animal in 2013. But that famous image is not what a blobfish actually looks like. It is what a blobfish looks like after being dragged from a depth of roughly 3,000 feet to the surface. A journey that drops the surrounding pressure from 120 times atmospheric to just 1. Without the pressure that normally supports its body, the flesh collapses and spreads. The face droops. The form dissolves into something that looks like a deflated creature rather than a living one. In its actual habitat, the blobfish is a relatively ordinary-looking fish, firm, proportional, unremarkable. We took a creature perfectly adapted to its world, removed it from that world, and then laughed at what was left. Fact 38. The vampire squid is neither squid nor octopus. It is the last of its kind. Despite its name, the vampire squid does not drink blood. The name comes from its dark coloration and the cloak-like webbing connecting its 8 arms when threatened. It inverts this cloak over its body, covering itself like a cape. Taxonomically, the vampire squid occupies its own order, Vampiromorphidae, entirely separate from both squid and octopuses. It is the sole surviving member of an ancient lineage that diverged from other cephalopods hundreds of millions of years ago. Every other member of its evolutionary line is extinct. It lives at depths between 2,000 and 3,000 feet. In the oxygen minimum zone, a layer of water so depleted of oxygen that most animals cannot survive there. The vampire squid thrives in it, protected from predators that cannot tolerate those conditions. It is not a squid. It is not an octopus. It is a living fossil, the last survivor of a line that time forgot, still drifting through the dark. Fact 39. The Dumbo octopus is perhaps the gentlest-looking thing in the entire abyss, named for the large, ear-like fins on either side of its head. which it flaps slowly to propel itself through the water. The Dumbo octopus is found at depths ranging from 1,000 to over 13,000 feet, making it the deepest living octopus genus known to science. Unlike most octopuses, which have a radula, a rasp-like structure used to tear apart prey, the Dumbo octopus swallows its food whole. It feeds on small crustaceans, worms, and other organisms it encounters near the ocean floor, moving through the dark with a slow, unhurried grace that seems entirely at odds with its surroundings. It has no ink sac. In the total darkness of the deep ocean, ink would serve no purpose. In a zone defined by pressure and cold, and the absence of almost everything familiar, the Dumbo octopus moves like something out of a dream, soft, slow, and quietly extraordinary. Strange shapes in the dark, each one a solution to a problem the surface world never had to solve. Patient, quiet, completely themselves. Fact 40. Dragonfish have teeth on their tongues, and their teeth are transparent. The deep-sea dragonfish is a small, slender predator, typically no more than 6 inches long, that hunts in the midnight zone using a combination of bioluminescence and an anatomy that seems almost deliberately unsettling. Its teeth are transparent. Under normal light, they are nearly invisible, an adaptation that prevents any faint, bioluminescent glow from reflecting off them and alerting prey. The jaws themselves can unhinge dramatically, allowing the dragonfish to swallow animals considerably larger than its head. It also produces red bioluminescent light from organs beneath its eyes, a rare ability in the deep ocean where most bioluminescence is blue or green. Most deep-sea animals cannot see red light at all, making it essentially invisible. The dragonfish uses this private wavelength like a flashlight that only it can see. Transparent teeth, private light frequencies, unhinged jaws. In the deep ocean, even a 6-inch fish contains more engineering than most things alive. Fact 41. The siphonophore can stretch longer than a blue whale, and it is one animal made of thousands. In 2020, researchers exploring deep waters off the coast of Western Australia encountered a siphonophore estimated at approximately 150 feet in length, potentially the longest animal ever recorded. A siphonophore is not, strictly speaking, a single animal. It is a colonial organism, a collection of individual animals called zooids, each genetically identical, each specialized for a specific function. Some zooids handle propulsion, some handle feeding, some handle reproduction. None can survive independently. The colony functions as a single organism, hunting, moving, reproducing as one, while being composed of thousands of distinct living things, each with its own cellular identity. The most well-known siphonophore is the Portuguese man-o'-war, visible at the surface, but the deep ocean varieties grow to lengths that dwarf anything on land. One animal, thousands of bodies, longer than any creature on Earth, drifting in the dark unhurried, through water that has never been warm. Fact 42. The immortal jellyfish can reverse its own aging and begin again. Turritopsis dohrnii is a small jellyfish, barely a quarter-inch across, found in oceans around the world. It has one biological capability that no other known animal possesses. When stressed by injury, starvation, age, or environmental pressure, it can revert its cells back to an earlier developmental state through a process called transdifferentiation. A fully mature adult jellyfish can transform itself back into a polyp, the juvenile form, and begin its life cycle again from the start. In theory, this process can repeat indefinitely. Scientists are careful to note that in the wild, Turritopsis dohrnii still dies regularly from predation, disease, and competition. Immortality in a laboratory setting is not the same as immortality in an ocean full of things that eat jellyfish, but the mechanism exists. The cellular machinery for biological reversal is real. Somewhere in the ocean right now, a jellyfish is growing younger, beginning again quietly, as if time were simply a direction it could choose to reverse. Growing younger, beginning again. The ocean contains lives that do not follow the rules we thought were universal. Even time down here is negotiable. Fact 43. Goblin sharks have jaws that extend out of their face to catch prey. The goblin shark is one of the least seen sharks on Earth, a deep water species found at depths below 330 feet, occasionally as deep as 400 to 300 feet, across oceans worldwide. It is rarely encountered alive, and even more rarely studied in its natural habitat. Its most distinctive feature is its jaw, which can project forward out of its face in a rapid, slingshot-like motion to snap up prey. This mechanism, called jaw protrusion, exists in many sharks, but the goblin shark has taken it further than any other species. Its jaw extends far beyond the tip of its snout, in a movement so fast it is difficult to capture on video. It also has a distinctive flat, elongated snout covered in electroreceptors, sensory organs that detect the electrical fields produced by the muscle movements of nearby animals. It doesn't need to see you. It doesn't need to hear you. It feels the electricity your body produces, and it closes the distance in the dark. Fact: sea cucumbers breathe through a very unexpected part of their body. Sea cucumbers are among the most abundant animals on the deep ocean floor. Slow, soft, sausage-shaped creatures that move across the sediment, consuming organic material and processing vast quantities of sediment through their digestive systems. They breathe through their anus. More precisely, they draw water in through their posterior opening into a structure called the respiratory tree, a branching network of tubes that extracts oxygen from the water before expelling it again. Some species also host small fish and shrimp that live inside this respiratory tree, entering and exiting through the same opening, using the sea cucumber's body as shelter. Sea cucumbers make up an estimated 90% of the biomass on some deep sea floors. They are, in terms of sheer ecological impact, among the most important animals in the deep ocean. Processing sediment, recycling nutrients, sustaining ecosystems. The deep ocean's most essential janitor breathes through its own rear end. Biology at depth has a sense of humor. Fact 45. The cookie cutter shark takes perfect circular bites out of animals 10 times. Its size, the cookie cutter shark is small, typically about 20 inches long. It lives at depths between 1,000 and 12,000 feet and is rarely seen directly. For a long time, marine biologists were puzzled by perfectly circular wounds appearing on large marine animals. Dolphins, whales, tuna, even great white sharks, with no explanation for what was causing them. The answer was the cookie cutter. It latches onto much larger animals using specialized lips that create suction, then rotates its entire body while its lower jaw, lined with large, interlocking triangular teeth, carves out a clean, circular plug of flesh. The wound is deep, perfectly round, and about the size of a tennis ball. It does not kill its hosts. It simply removes a piece and moves on. Nuclear submarines operating in the Pacific have returned to port with damage to their rubber sonar domes. Bitten through by cookie-cutter sharks that mistook the equipment for something worth eating. 20 inches long, leaves marks on submarines. Fact 46. Some deep-sea creatures live for 500 years. Incomplete, unbroken darkness, cold water slows everything down. Metabolism, growth, reproduction. The cellular processes that drive aging in warm-blooded animals operate at a fraction of their normal pace in near-freezing water. And, over evolutionary time, deep-sea animals have exploited this to an extraordinary degree. The Greenland shark, which inhabits cold, deep waters of the North Atlantic and Arctic, is now believed to be the longest-lived vertebrate on Earth. Using radiocarbon dating of eye tissue, which forms during development and is never replaced, researchers have estimated individual Greenland sharks at ages exceeding 400 years, with some potentially reaching 500 years or more. A Greenland shark alive today may have been born before the Mayflower crossed the Atlantic. It has spent 5 centuries moving slowly through cold, dark water, eating occasionally, growing imperceptibly, aging at a pace so slow it makes human lifespans feel like an afternoon. Time in the deep ocean runs differently. Fact 47. There are fish here that produce no waste. Their bodies recycle everything in an environment where food is scarce and the nearest meal may be days away. The deep ocean has produced animals with metabolic efficiencies that surface biology rarely approaches. Some deep-sea fish extract such a thorough proportion of nutrients from their food that they produce almost no digestive waste. Their metabolic rates are so low, some measured at 10 to 100 times slower than comparable surface species, that they can survive for months on a single meal, their bodies cycling and recycling nutrients with a completeness that has no real equivalent on land. These fish also tend to have very low muscle mass, minimal skeletal structure, and high water content in their tissues. Adaptations that reduce the energetic cost of simply existing in an environment where every calorie is. In a world where food arrives as slow, faint snow from a surface far above, the most successful strategy is not to consume more. It is to need less. Fact 48. Every creature in the deep is a quiet argument that impossibility is just a failure of imagination. Before we explored the deep ocean, science had reasonable grounds to believe that life below a certain depth was unlikely. The pressure too extreme, the darkness too complete, the cold too profound, the food supply too thin. Then we looked and found amphipods at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, snailfish at 27,000 feet, microbes inside the rocks themselves, a jellyfish that can reverse its own aging, a shark that may live for 500 years, a colonial animal longer than a blue whale, drifting in water that had never been warm. Every one of these discoveries required revising what we thought life could do. Not once, not twice, continuously. Every time we sent a light into a place we assumed was empty. The deep ocean has not finished surprising us. It has barely started. Fact 49. In 1977, we discovered that life doesn't need the sun, and it changed everything. For most of scientific history, sunlight was considered the non-negotiable foundation of all life on Earth. Every food chain, every ecosystem, Every living thing traced its energy back to photosynthesis, to plants and algae capturing sunlight and converting it into something biological. Then, in 1977, a research team aboard the submersible Alvin descended to the Galapagos Rift in the Pacific Ocean and found something that didn't fit. Clustered around cracks in the ocean floor in total darkness at depths of roughly 8,000 feet were entire ecosystems. Tube worms, clams, crabs, shrimp, living without any connection to sunlight whatsoever. Their energy came entirely from chemicals seeping up from the earth below. In a single dive, the foundational assumption of biology was quietly revised. Life doesn't need the sun. It never did. Fact 50. Hydrothermal vents reach temperatures of 700 Fahrenheit, and tube worms live right beside them. The water pouring out of hydrothermal vents reaches temperatures of up to 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to melt lead, hot enough that it would instantly vaporize if it weren't under pressures so extreme that water cannot become steam. Inches away from this superheated outflow, tube worms, Riftia pachyptila, live in colonies so dense they resemble underwater forests. They grow up to 8 feet long, have no mouth, no digestive cells, and no way to eat in any conventional sense. Instead, their bodies are filled with a specialized organ called a trophosome, packed with bacteria that perform chemosynthesis, converting hydrogen sulfide from the vent into energy the worm can use. The tube worm does not eat. It is, in a sense, a living greenhouse, farming bacteria inside its own body, sustaining itself on chemistry alone. Fact 51. These ecosystems run entirely on chemosynthesis. Energy from chemicals, not light. Photosynthesis converts sunlight into energy. Chemosynthesis converts chemicals, primarily hydrogen sulfide, methane, and ammonia seeping from the ocean floor, into energy. No light required, no connection to the surface world needed. At hydrothermal vent ecosystems, bacteria and archaea perform chemosynthesis at the base of the food chain, just as phytoplankton do in sunlit waters above. Larger organisms, tube worms, clams, mussels, shrimp, either host these microbes internally or feed on them directly. The result is an ecosystem that is energetically sealed from the surface world, a self-contained biological community running on the internal heat of the Earth itself, on chemistry that has been seeping from the planet's interior since long before photosynthesis ever evolved. These ecosystems don't depend on the sun. They depend on the Earth, on the slow, steady heat of a planet still cooling from its own formation 4.5 billion years ago. Fact 52. Black smokers, chimneys of superheated water rising from the ocean floor. When superheated water from hydrothermal vents meets the near, freezing water of the deep ocean, the minerals dissolved in it, iron sulfide, copper sulfide, zinc, precipitate out instantly, forming dark clouds that billow upward like smoke from an industrial chimney. Over time, these minerals accumulate into towering structures called black smokers, chimneys of rock that can grow to over 60 feet tall, pouring a continuous stream of dark, mineral-rich water into the ocean above them. The tallest known hydrothermal vent structure, called Poseidon, located in the Lost City vent field in the Atlantic Ocean, rises approximately 200 feet from the ocean floor. Taller than a 15-story building, made entirely of minerals deposited by superheated water over thousands of years. On the ocean floor, in complete darkness, the Earth is building cathedrals, heat from the planet's own core, chemistry instead of sunlight, life finding its foundation not in the sky, but in the ground beneath the ground. Fact 53. Each vent ecosystem is an island. Self-contained, uneachable hydrothermal vents are not evenly distributed across the ocean floor. They occur along mid-ocean ridges, the underwater mountain chains, where tectonic plates pull apart and magma wells up from below, and they are separated from each other by miles of cold, barren seafloor. Each vent ecosystem is effectively an island. The organisms living around one vent are isolated from those living around the next, separated by distances they cannot cross and environments that cannot support them. Genetic studies of vent species have found distinct populations adapted to individual vent fields, evolving separately over thousands of years. When a vent goes dormant, as all vents eventually do, its ecosystem collapses. The tube worms die. The chemosynthetic bacteria disperse. The extraordinary community built up over centuries dissolves back into the cold and the dark. An island that appears, flourishes, and vanishes, with no one to notice it was ever there. Fact: the iron in your blood and the iron on the ocean floor came from the same exploding star. The iron dissolved in hydrothermal vent fluid, the same iron that precipitates into black smokers, that drifts into the water column, that is eventually incorporated into the tissues of vent organisms, was not made on Earth. It was forged in the nuclear furnace of a star that died before our solar system existed. When massive stars exhaust their fuel and explode as supernovae, they scatter heavy elements, iron, nickel, cobalt, into the interstellar medium. That material eventually coalesced into new solar systems, new planets, new oceans. The iron on the ocean floor was made in a star. The iron in your hemoglobin, the molecule that carries oxygen through your blood right now, was made in a star. The same process, possibly the same star. You and the ocean floor share an origin older than the Earth itself. Fact 55. Hydrothermal vents may be where life on Earth first began. The question of where life originated on Earth remains one of the most contested in all of science. But one hypothesis has gained significant traction in recent decades: that life began not in a warm surface pond, as Darwin once suggested, but in the alkaline hydrothermal vents of the deep ocean. These vents, distinct from the high-temperature black smokers, cooler and more chemically stable, provide a natural proton gradient across thin mineral membranes, a chemical condition strikingly similar to the mechanism used by every living cell on Earth to generate energy. The chemistry of early life and the chemistry of alkaline hydrothermal vents are, in several key ways, the same chemistry. If this hypothesis is correct, then life did not begin under the sun. It began in the dark, near heat, surrounded by minerals, in the deepest and most inhospitable part of the ocean. And from there, it spread to cover the entire planet. Fact 56. If life began here, it may have begun the same way on other ocean moons. Europa is one of Jupiter's moons, a world covered in a shell of ice beneath which scientists believe a liquid ocean may exist, kept warm by tidal forces generated by Jupiter's enormous gravity. Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, actively vents water vapor and organic compounds from cracks in its icy surface, evidence of a liquid ocean below and possibly of hydrothermal activity on its ocean floor. If life can begin at hydrothermal vents, without sunlight, without a surface, without any connection to a star, Then the conditions required for life become dramatically less restrictive. Europa, Enceladus, possibly Titan, possibly ocean worlds we haven't yet discovered, orbiting stars we haven't yet looked at closely. The deep ocean didn't just change our understanding of life on Earth. It changed the probability that we are not alone. Fact 57, when a vent dies, the ecosystem it built dissolves, and somewhere else another begins. Hydrothermal vents are not permanent. As tectonic plates shift and magma chambers cool, individual vents go dormant, sometimes gradually, sometimes within years. The superheated flow slows, cools, and eventually stops. Without the chemical energy that sustained it, the ecosystem built around it begins to collapse. The tube worms die first, then the specialized bacteria, then the larger animals that fed on them. Within years, a vent field that hosted thousands of species can become cold, dark, and barren, indistinguishable from any other stretch of deep ocean floor. But somewhere along the mid-ocean ridge, new cracks are opening, new vent fields are forming. New chemical gradients are drawing the first microbes to a fresh supply of hydrogen sulfide. The ecosystem doesn't move. It dissolves and is reborn elsewhere. Life in the deep ocean doesn't persist. It begins again continuously in darkness, without memory of what came before. Fact 58. The deep ocean may contain more biomass than all the forests on land combined. The deep ocean is often imagined as nearly empty, a vast, cold desert with scattered oases around hydrothermal vents and the occasional drifting predator. The reality may be almost the opposite. Estimates of microbial biomass in deep ocean sediments and crustal rocks suggest a total mass of living organisms that rivals or exceeds the total biomass of all surface life combined. These microbes, living in rock pores, in sediment layers, in the walls of hydrothermal vent chimneys, metabolize so slowly they are barely distinguishable from the minerals around them. But they are alive. The deep ocean is not empty. It is full of life so slow, so patient, so foreign to our understanding of what biology looks like, that we have spent centuries looking at it and seeing nothing. The largest ecosystem on Earth may be the one we have barely begun to find. Fact 59. The ocean remembers. Temperatures from hundreds of thousands of years ago. The deep ocean is an archive, not metaphorically, literally. Water that sinks to the deep ocean carries with it a chemical signature of the conditions at the surface when it descended. The temperature, the salinity, the concentration of dissolved gases. These signatures are preserved in the water itself and in the sediment that accumulates on the ocean floor, layer by layer, year by year, century by century. By drilling into deep ocean sediment cores and analyzing the chemistry of microscopic shells preserved within them, scientists can reconstruct ocean temperatures going back hundreds of thousands of years, through ice ages, through warm periods, through the aftermath of asteroid impacts and volcanic eruptions. The ocean doesn't just exist in the present. It carries the past inside it, encoded in chemistry, waiting for someone to learn how to read it. Fact 60. There is water in the deep ocean that last touched the surface over 1,000 years ago. When surface water cools and becomes dense enough to sink, primarily near Greenland and Antarctica, it descends into the deep ocean and begins a slow journey through the global circulation system. This journey takes time, enormous amounts of time. Water that sinks in the North Atlantic may not return to the surface for roughly 1,000 years. Water that enters the deep Pacific circulation may take even longer. Some estimates suggest up to 2,000 years before it sees daylight again. The water at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean right now was last at the surface during the early medieval period. It has been in the dark ever since, slowly moving, slowly cooling, carrying the chemical memory of a world that existed before the printing press, before the compass, before any European had ever seen the Americas. It is still traveling. It has not yet arrived. Fact 61. The ocean floor holds the most complete climate record on Earth ice cores drilled from Antarctica and Greenland preserve atmospheric records going back roughly 800,000 years. An extraordinary archive of past climates. Ocean sediment cores go further. The sediment accumulating on the deep ocean floor contains the remains of foraminifera, microscopic single-celled organisms that build calcium, carbonate shells, and drift in surface waters before dying and sinking. The ratio of oxygen isotopes in these shells reflects the temperature and ice volume of the ocean at the time the organism was alive. By analyzing sediment cores from the ocean floor, scientists have reconstructed climate records extending back tens of millions of years. Through the opening and closing of ocean gateways, the growth and retreat of ice sheets, the gradual cooling of the planet over geological time, every inch of ocean sediment is a page in the longest continuous record of Earth's climate that exists anywhere. Millions of years of memory, written in shells smaller than a grain of sand. The ocean has been keeping records since long before anything on Earth could read. Fact 62. Underwater mountains taller than the Rockies exist, and most have never been named. The ocean floor is not flat. It is one of the most topographically complex surfaces on Earth, crossed by mountain ranges, cut by deep valleys, dotted with volcanic peaks that rise thousands of feet from the seafloor. Seamounts, underwater mountains formed by volcanic activity, number in the tens of thousands across the global ocean. The tallest known seamount, Mauna Kea in Hawaii, rises 33,500 feet from its base on the ocean floor to its summit above sea level. Taller than Everest, measured from base to peak. But most seamounts never break the surface. They rise silently from the ocean floor, some to within a few hundred feet of the sunlight, and remain entirely submerged, unnamed, unmapped, unseen. Each one is an ecosystem, a hard surface in a soft-bottomed world where corals, sponges, and fish congregate. Mountains no human eye has ever seen, covered in life no one has ever catalogued. Fact 63. There are rivers and lakes at the bottom of the ocean, with their own shorelines and currents on the ocean floor. In certain locations along continental margins, something unexpected exists. Bodies of water sitting within the ocean itself, separated from the surrounding seawater by their own density. These brine pools form when ancient salt deposits dissolve into the overlying water, creating a solution so dense and so salty that it doesn't mix with the seawater above. It pools in depressions on the ocean floor, forming lakes and rivers with their own distinct shorelines, visible boundaries where the brine meets the regular seawater above it. Animals that swim into a brine pool are often immediately overwhelmed by the extreme salinity and sink to the bottom, which is why these features are sometimes called the Bermuda Triangles of the deep. The ocean contains lakes within itself, bodies of water within bodies of water, each with its own chemistry, its own boundary, its own strange and inhospitable interior. Fact 64. The ocean floor is still being mapped. Over 80% remains unseen. The entire surface of Earth, land and ocean, has been broadly surveyed by satellite altimetry, which measures gravitational variations to infer the shape of the seafloor. This gives us a rough picture, accurate to within a few miles. But high-resolution mapping, the kind that reveals individual mountains, valleys, vent fields, and geological features in detail, requires sonar surveys conducted by ships moving slowly across the surface. This process is expensive, time-consuming, and has covered only about 20 to 25% of the ocean floor as of recent estimates. The Seabed 2030 project, a global initiative launched in 2017, aims to produce a complete high-resolution map of the entire ocean floor by the end of this decade. As of now, more than 80% of the ocean floor remains unmapped at meaningful resolution. The largest surface on our planet is also the least known. We are still, in the most literal sense, drawing the map. Fact 65. Shipwrecks on the ocean floor slowly become reefs' death, becoming new life. There are an estimated 3 million shipwrecks on the ocean floor worldwide. Vessels from every era of human seafaring, from ancient wooden trading ships to modern steel tankers, scattered across every ocean basin on Earth. In the deep ocean, where light and oxygen are scarce, wooden wrecks are consumed by specialized bacteria and wood-boring organisms over decades. Metal wrecks corrode more slowly, their hulls gradually colonized by microbes, then by soft corals and sponges, then by the fish and invertebrates that follow. Over centuries, a sunken ship becomes indistinguishable from a natural reef, a hard surface in an otherwise soft and featureless landscape, drawing life from across the surrounding seafloor. The ocean takes human catastrophe and converts it, patiently and without judgment, into habitat. Every ending on the ocean floor becomes, in time, a beginning. Fact 66. Invisible rivers of sediment flow. In silence along the ocean floor, occasionally, without warning, and without any surface sign, an invisible river begins to flow along the ocean floor. Turbidity currents, dense flows of water, saturated with suspended sediment, are triggered by earthquakes, by the destabilization of sediment on steep underwater slopes, or by the slow accumulation of material past a tipping point. When they release, they move fast, sometimes exceeding 50 miles per hour, carving deep channels into the ocean floor called submarine canyons, some of which rival the Grand Canyon in scale. In 1929, a turbidity current triggered by an earthquake off the coast of Newfoundland snapped 12 transatlantic telegraph cables in sequence over the course of 13 hours. The timing of each break, allowing scientists to calculate the current's speed as it traveled south across the ocean floor. Rivers that no one sees, traveling at highway speeds through absolute darkness. The ocean floor is not still. It has never been still. Fact 67. Every second breath you take came from the ocean. We credit forests with producing the air we breathe. The Amazon gets called the lungs of the earth. It's a compelling image, and it's incomplete. The ocean produces somewhere between 50 and 80% of Earth's atmospheric oxygen. Most of it comes from phytoplankton, microscopic organisms drifting in the sunlit surface waters. photosynthesizing at a scale that dwarfs every forest on every continent combined. A single species, Prochlorococcus, a bacterium so small that 1,000,000 of them would fit on the period at the end of this sentence, is thought to produce roughly 20% of all the oxygen on Earth by itself. Right now, as your chest rises and falls in the dark, the breath filling your lungs most likely began its life as the exhale of an organism you will never see, in a part of the ocean you will never visit. Fact 68. The water molecules in your body have spent time at the bottom of the ocean. The water in your body is old, extraordinarily old. Water molecules are not created or destroyed in the water cycle. They are redistributed. The same molecules cycle continuously through oceans, atmosphere, ice, rivers, soil, and living organisms over millions of years. There is no new water. There is only water that has been somewhere else. The water molecules currently in your cells, in your blood, your tissues, your tears, have each traveled an incomprehensible distance through time. Some have spent centuries in polar ice. Some have fallen as rain over ancient forests. Some have drifted through the deep ocean in complete darkness at pressures 1,000 times what you feel right now. They have been here since the Earth formed. They are passing through you tonight, briefly, on their way to somewhere else. Fact 69. Right now, the ocean is regulating the temperature of the air above your city, wherever you are tonight. A city, a suburb, a rural town. The temperature outside your window is not determined solely by your latitude, your altitude, or the season. The ocean has a hand in it. Ocean currents transport enormous quantities of heat from the tropics toward the poles, moderating the climates of entire continents. The Gulf Stream carries warm water from the Gulf of Mexico northeastward across the Atlantic, keeping Western Europe dramatically warmer than it would otherwise be at the same latitude. Without it, London would have the climate of northern Canada. Cities along the American East Coast would experience far more extreme winters. The ocean is not a distant thing. It is actively, continuously shaping the air temperature in every city on Earth, including wherever you happen to be lying right now, breathing slowly in the dark. The ocean is here, even now, in the air above your city, in the water in your cells, in every breath, in and out, slow and steady and ancient. Fact 70. The ocean absorbs nearly 1/3 of all carbon dioxide humans produce. Quietly, without asking since the beginning of the industrial era, humans have released enormous quantities of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The ocean has been absorbing a significant portion of it. Roughly 25 to 30% of all human carbon emissions, dissolving it into seawater through gas exchange at the surface. This has slowed the pace of atmospheric warming in ways that are difficult to fully calculate. Without the ocean's absorption, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere would be considerably higher than they are today. The cost is real. Dissolved carbon dioxide forms carbonic acid, gradually lowering the pH of Alfasser, a process called ocean acidification that is measurably affecting coral reefs, shellfish, and the marine food web. The ocean has been absorbing the consequences of decisions it had no part in making, quietly, continuously, for over 200 years. Fact 71. Whales sing songs that travel thousands of miles. And other whales answer. Blue whales produce the loudest sounds of any animal on Earth. Low-frequency calls that can reach 188 decibels. louder than a jet engine, in a frequency range below the threshold of human hearing. These calls travel through the SOFAR channel, the acoustic highway of the deep ocean, for distances that researchers are still working to fully measure. Estimates suggest that blue whale calls can propagate across entire ocean basins, potentially from one side of the Atlantic or Pacific to the other. Whether whales communicate meaningfully across these distances remains an open scientific question. But the calls are real, the distances are real, and the responses, recorded on hydrophone arrays thousands of miles apart, suggest that something is being transmitted and received. Somewhere in the ocean, right now, a whale is singing, and somewhere far away, another one is listening. Fact 72. The sound of the ocean you hear in a shell is not the sea. Hold a large shell to your ear, and you hear something that sounds unmistakably like ocean waves, a soft, continuous roar that seems to carry the memory of every beach you've ever stood on. It is not the ocean. The sound inside a shell is the resonance of ambient noise around you, the hum of air conditioning, distant traffic, the movement of air in the room, amplified and filtered by the shape of the shell's interior cavity into a frequency that resembles surf. In a perfectly silent room, the shell would be nearly quiet. What you're hearing is your own environment reflected back at you in a shape that sounds like the sea. The ocean is not in the shell, but perhaps that is the more interesting truth, that the ocean lives so deeply in human memory that we hear it in things that aren't there at all. Fact 73. We have explored less than 20% of Earth's oceans. Space exploration captures the imagination in a way that ocean exploration rarely does. We track the progress of Mars rovers in real time. We watch rocket launches. We follow the James Webb Space Telescope's images of galaxies billions of light years away with genuine excitement. And yet the ocean, 3 miles deep in places, covering 71% of the planet we live on, remains more than 80% unexplored at any meaningful resolution. Every deep-sea expedition returns with new species, new geological features, new chemical processes, new evidence of life in places where life was not expected. We are not running out of ocean to discover. We have barely started. The most alien landscape most of us will never see is not on another world. It is here, beneath the surface of the planet we were born on, waiting with the patience of something 4 billion years old. Fact 74. The ocean has been here for 3.8 billion years, patient, deep, and still becoming. The first oceans formed on Earth approximately 3.8 billion years ago, possibly earlier, as the young planet cooled enough for water vapor in the atmosphere to condense and fall as rain. For millions of years it rained, filling the low-lying basins of a world still being shaped by volcanic eruptions and meteor impacts. Those early oceans were different from the ones we know, hotter, more acidic, lacking the oxygen that would eventually make complex life possible. But they were oceans, bodies of liquid water on a rocky planet, and in them, within a few 100 million years, life began. The ocean has been here for longer than anything else on the surface of this planet. Longer than the continents in their current form. Longer than the atmosphere we breathe. It was here before us. It will be here long after. And right now, tonight, it is still becoming. Still changing, still deepening, still full of things we have not yet found. Right now, somewhere in the Pacific, a whale is singing, and no human will ever hear it. The Pacific Ocean covers more than 60 million square miles. At any given moment, blue whales, fin whales, and humpback whales are moving through its depths, calling, answering, navigating by sound through water that carries their voices farther than any terrestrial creature has ever communicated. Most of these songs will never be heard by a human being. No researcher is listening. No hydrophone is close enough. The call moves through the SOFAR channel, travels perhaps 1,000 miles, and arrives at open water, received by nothing but more ocean. It doesn't matter to the whale. The song was never for us. It was for the ocean, for the other whales somewhere in the dark, for the water itself, for the simple biological fact of being alive in a body of water large enough to carry your voice to the horizon and beyond. Right now, someone is singing, the ocean is listening. Fact 76. Right now, marine snow is falling in complete silence 3 miles below the surface, 3 miles beneath the surface of the ocean, beneath the shipping lanes and the fishing nets and the submarine cables and everything else humans have placed in the sea. Marine snow is falling. It has been falling all day. It fell yesterday. It will fall tomorrow. Tiny particles of organic matter, the remains of phytoplankton, the cast-off shells of zooplankton, the slow dissolving of everything that lived and died in the sunlit zone above, drifting downward through water that grows colder and darker with every foot of descent. A single particle may take 3 to 4 weeks to complete its journey from the surface to the sea floor. By the time it arrives, whatever warmth and light it once carried from the world above has long since been absorbed by the water around. It arrives cold. It arrives in darkness, and it is received quietly by everything waiting below. Fact 77. Right now, a hydrothermal vent is slowly building a new chimney on the ocean floor. Somewhere along a mid-ocean ridge, the underwater mountain chain that circles the earth like the seam on a baseball. A hydrothermal vent is pouring superheated, mineral-rich water into the cold, dark ocean above it. The minerals are precipitating out of solution as they cool, depositing layer by layer onto the growing structure of the chimney, a fraction of a millimeter at a time, continuous, unhurried. The vent does not know it is building something. It is simply releasing what the earth is pushing up from below, the heat of a planet still cooling from its own formation, expressed as chemistry, expressed as structure, expressed as the slow accretion of a tower of rock on the floor of an ocean 3 miles deep. By the time any human instrument detects this particular vent, it may already be decades old or centuries. The ocean floor does not announce what it is making. Building in the dark, falling in the dark, singing in the dark, the ocean has never needed an audience. Fact 78. Right now, a bioluminescent creature is making its own small light in a darkness older than memory, somewhere in the midnight zone 3 feet below the surface, in water that has never been touched by sunlight. A small animal is glowing. Perhaps it is a lanternfish, producing a faint pattern of blue-green light along its belly. Perhaps it is a comb jelly, its bioluminescent waves rippling outward from some disturbance in the water. Perhaps it is a single bacterium, drifting on a particle of marine snow, producing light through chemistry so simple and so ancient it predates complex life itself. The light lasts for a moment, or for hours, or continuously without interruption, for the entire life of the animal producing it. No one is watching. In the darkness of the deep ocean, light is made and unmade millions of times each day. A private illumination in a world that has no use for witnesses. Right now, something is glowing 3 miles below the surface of the sea. Small, cold, and quietly extraordinary. Fact 79. Right now, the tide is pulling gently away from a shore. Somewhere in the world, tides are the ocean's response to the gravitational pull of the moon and, to a lesser extent, the sun. As the moon moves through its orbit, the water on the side of Earth closest to it is pulled slightly toward it, creating a bulge of water that we experience as high tide. On the opposite side of the Earth, another bulge forms simultaneously. Between them, the water is drawn down, low tide. This cycle repeats roughly every 12 hours and 25 minutes, everywhere on Earth, without interruption. Right now, somewhere in the world, on a beach in Maine, on a mudflat in Alaska, on a rocky shore in the Pacific Northwest, the tide is pulling back. The water is retreating down the sand, uncovering whatever the last high tide left behind. The moon is pulling. The ocean is responding, as it has, without missing a single cycle for 4 billion years. Fact 80. Right now, the ocean is doing what it has always done. Holding, moving, breathing. Waiting. The ocean tonight is the same ocean it was this morning. The same ocean it was 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 100 million years ago, changed in its chemistry, in its temperature, in the life it contains, but continuous, unbroken, still here. Right now, somewhere in the North Atlantic, cold, dense water is sinking toward the seafloor and beginning a journey that will take 1,000 years to complete. Somewhere in the tropics, surface water warmed by the sun is evaporating into clouds that will fall as rain on a continent weeks from now. Somewhere in the Southern Ocean, waves driven by winds that have circled Antarctica without interruption for thousands of miles are building toward a distant shore. The ocean is not resting. It is working, as it always has, as it always will, moving heat, cycling carbon, making oxygen, carrying salt and sound, and the slow memory of every climate this planet has ever experienced. It does not need to be watched to continue. It does not need to be understood to matter. It simply holds everything that has ever lived in it, everything that depends on it, everything that has ever stood at its edge and wondered what was beneath the surface, including you tonight, held, breathing, resting inside something 4 billion years old. The ocean is still here, and so are you, and now the light fades, as it always does at depth. We've traveled a long way tonight, from the surface, where waves carry the memory of storms that ended weeks ago, down through the twilight zone, where animals make their daily migration in the dark, past the midnight zone where jellyfish drift like slow ghosts through water that has never once been warm, all the way to the hadal zone, to sediment so soft it took 1 million years to settle, to creatures so transparent they have nothing left to hide, to a silence so complete that even sound arrives there only as a whisper. We've visited the vents where life rewrote its own rulebook. We've heard the songs that cross entire ocean basins without a single listener. We've watched the snow that falls and falls and falls 3 miles down in a darkness older than anything that has ever walked on land. And somewhere in all of it, in the pressure and the cold and the impossible quiet, there was you, breathing slowly, thoughts softening, already, perhaps halfway somewhere else. Here is what the ocean knows, and what tonight reminds us. You are not separate from any of this. The water in your body has spent time at the bottom of the sea. The oxygen in your lungs was made by organisms so small they have no name you would recognize. The iron in your blood was forged in a star that died before this planet existed. You are not observing the ocean from a distance. You are made of the same ancient material, shaped by the same forces, sustained by the same cycles, connected to the same unbroken thread of chemistry that stretches back 4 billion years to the first water that ever fell on this young and restless world. The ocean doesn't need you to understand it. It only needs you to rest inside it, which, tonight, you already are. So wherever you are now, whether still awake or drifting somewhere past the edge of thought, may your dreams tonight be as wide as open water. May your body rest like sediment settling slowly toward the floor. May you carry with you, even faintly, the feeling of something vast and patient holding you from below. If nights like this one help you rest, Sleepy Science Stories would love to have you stay. Subscribe when you get a chance. It helps others find their way here too. One quiet night at a time. The ocean will be here tomorrow. It has nowhere else to be. Good night.